Welcome everyone to the Two-Sided Truth podcast, where we debate it, defend it, and then you decide. A podcast where the facts are presented and the winner is determined. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, our sponsors for this evening's podcast is The Flip Side with Lisa Tracy and Shy High Apparel. I'm really excited that you decided to join us this evening. Tonight, we have two debaters with opposing views debating on the topic of the killing of Renée Good. Who was at fault, ICE or Renée Good? So, here are the rules of engagement. Our debaters have 4 rounds to debate. 3 rounds have subtopics. And the last round, they have 4 rounds to debate. 4 rounds are subtopics, and the last debate is a sparring round where they will get a chance to ask each other questions and respond. With the exception of the sparring round, each debate is about 8 minutes long, which includes debaters laying out their arguments and presenting their facts, and then they will both have a chance to respond before moving on to the next round. You, as the viewer, will vote. You will have a chance to vote on each round. We encourage you to make comments in the chat, but we also ask that your comments are respectful. Our debaters have worked really hard to present their topics and to debate. This message is for our debaters and our viewers. It's okay to be emotional and passionate, but we definitely want to be respectful. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. However, you can only cast your vote on the twosidedtruth.com. So at the end of this debate, there will be a winner because you would have voted. So with that said, let's begin. Let's welcome our debaters, Demetrius Reddy and Michael Crenshaw. Demetrius, introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what side of the aisle do you land on? Oh, Demetrius, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
All right, my name is Demetrius Reddy. I've been working in customer service for over 30 years, family man, and I am coming to bring forth information. Hopefully, if you've never heard it before, this information could save someone's life. That's my introduction.
Awesome. Mike, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself as well as what side are you on?
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Crenshaw. I have been in education for 25 years. I've been teaching at the college level for 21 years. And the side that I'm on is I am on the side of saying that ICE is at fault. And I also want to say that whenever I enjoy being on these podcasts, I thank Lisa for bringing me on, and I'm grateful to be able to share the stage with the good brother Demetrius. And I just want to end by saying, for me, when I present stuff, I just present facts. That's just how I come. I eliminate emotion, and I also eliminate politics. As those who know me know, I'm independent. I do not fall on the side of Democrat or Republican. So that allows me to just spit facts and just go from there. So let's have some fun. Let's do it.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for that. So before we get started, I just want to share a little bit of a background for our audience. So again, I just want to let you all know we are live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We're also streaming on the Two-Sided Truth podcast. But remember, you can only vote on the Two-Sided Truth podcast. So the polls will be open in a few minutes. So a little bit of information. Renée Nicole Good, 37, was fatally shot by ICE officer Jonathan Ross in Minneapolis on January 7th, 2026. And video of the encounter has been widely reported and analyzed. The shooting has sparked protests, a Capitol Hill featuring Good's family, and new DHS steps on body cameras in Minneapolis. DHS policy says that deadly force is limited to situations where an officer has a reasonable belief of an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. And there are special cautions around shooting at or from moving vehicles. So, with that being said, our first round and subtopic is use of force and justification. Did the ICE agent have legitimate cause to fire at Renée Good? And I am going to pass it over to Demetrius. You have 2 minutes.
All right. Let me first say that this is a tragic death. Compassion demands that we tell the truth, not assign blame where the law doesn't support it, and not turn grief into a political theater. I'm not arguing that Renée deserved to die. I'm not arguing that officers are perfect. I am not arguing that the system shouldn't be examined. What I am arguing is that the accounts of the tragedy has been intentionally and recklessly mischaracterized. We have heard that Renée was murdered in cold blood, and that's false. A series of Renée's behavior ultimately placed her in a position to be killed and killed legally. Criminal blame must be based on law, not outrage, not emotion, and not the mob rule. Multiple actors increased the risk in this tragedy long before the trigger was ever pulled. First, I want to say clearly the loss of Renée Good is heartbreaking. No family should have to bury a loved one after a routine day turns chaotic. But criminal law doesn't ask whether an outcome was tragic. It asks whether an officer reasonably perceived an imminent threat in the moment. Under both federal and Minnesota standards, a vehicle moving towards an officer can constitute deadly force. According to federal accounts, the officer was confronted with a rapidly unfolding situation involving a moving vehicle, commands being issued, and seconds, not minutes, to react. The law does not require an officer to wait to be struck to defend himself. That doesn't mean that this death wasn't preventable, but it does mean that the threshold for criminal liability has not been met. Tragedy does not equal criminality. Time.
Thank you so much, Demetrius, for that. All right. Same question for you, Mike. Use
All
of
right.
force and justification. Did the ICE agent have legitimate cause to fire at Renée Good? And before you go, I do want to let the people know that the polls are open for this round. You are able to vote. The polls are open for this round. Okay, Mike.
All right, thank you, Lisa. And I completely agree with Demetrius on this point that this is a tragedy. When somebody loses their life, it's never a good thing. And when someone has to bury a family member, that's never a good thing at all. So that is not something that should ever, ever, ever be celebrated. With that said, I am definitely on the side of Jonathan Ross being at blame here. First off, when you watch the video, Renée is backing up. Okay, so she actually goes backwards. And then when she goes backwards, for some reason, Jonathan decides to jump in front of the vehicle, right? And so that literally made no sense to me. But also from a law standpoint, I want to make sure that I have this correct here because there's a lot that goes into this. So make sure I try to get all this in at one time. Under Minnesota statute 16921 subdivision 2, it states that no pedestrian should suddenly leave a curb or other place of safety and walk or run into the path of a vehicle, which is so close that it's impossible for the driver to yield. The key word in that is pedestrian, right? So what I did was I did a little bit more digging to find out whether or not the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, as well as, the police there considered, the ICE agent an actual pedestrian. And the fact of the matter is they do, because according to them, they do not actually recognize them as state or local officers. And because they don't recognize them as state or local officers, them being ICE agents, that actually makes them a pedestrian. And so the fact of the matter is that when you watch the video, he was on the side, and then the minute Renée backed up, he jumped in front of the vehicle, and then Renée was trying to turn right? And then as she was trying to turn right, that's when he shot her. And also you have to keep in mind that Minnesota's police chief said, Brian O'Hare said that Jonathan Ross did not follow proper procedure. Even President Trump has even said that, you know what, we kind of need to cool things down. And that's why he has actually made changes in terms of removing people from Minneapolis. 700 officers have been removed. And there's the bomb right there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mike. All right. Demetrius, would you like to counter? And
Oh
if
yes,
you,
I definitely would love to counter.
okay.
The first thing I would say is the federal officers do not operate under the jurisdiction of state law. Federal officers are judged by federal statutes and federal, and they have federal laws that they follow. This all unfolded because of the reckless driving and the behavior of Renee Good. You made a comment that he jumped in front of the vehicle. That is patently false. That is patently false. And I've heard that repeated multiple times. She ran that man over. And if hindsight says that her wheel was turning to the right, but if you're an officer, you're focusing on the driver. No reasonable driver would continue to drive after an officer has already told them to leave the vehicle, exit the vehicle. He's not watching the wheel to see where she's going. She appears, all he hears is number one, the chaotic scene that she was a part of. Random people blowing whistles, beating drums, and screaming to disrupt federal investigation taking place at that time. So she was at fault. No reasonable person would block off traffic, would get out of their bed to go out to a federal crime scene and disrupt officers. So we don't know how reasonable she is. I see so many people slowing down the video, looking at the wheel and all of this. That officer had a split second. The woman came towards him in the car, hit him, and he had internal bleeding, whether you believe it or not, but he was impacted by that car. Imminent danger, threat to physical bodily harm. That man's life was in danger, and therefore use of force was justified. That's under state law. That's under federal law. And regardless to what the political pundits have been saying, they are wrong, and people should not do what she did.
All right, Demetrius, thank you. Mike, would you like to counter? Before you go, the polls are open. The polls are open. You can only vote on the twosidedtruth.com. We are streaming live, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We are even streaming on the twosidedtruth.com, but you can only vote on the twosidedtruth.com. This round is open. Thank you. Michael.
Yes, all right. And I completely disagree with my good brother Demetrius here. First off, when it comes to federal versus state law, what the states and the cities are starting to do is that they're starting to create executive orders and policies and procedures. They're starting to write their own laws in terms of whether or not they can actually prosecute ICE agents for what they've been doing. That has not only happened in Minneapolis, but this is happening in LA, actually happening for the entire state of California, where Governor Newsom has actually created a portal where people can file complaints and they can investigate complaints. The most recent is Lisa's favorite mayor, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who has just come out and done an executive order saying that now Chicago police can actually investigate ICE officers. So you're right. I mean, there's a complete difference between federal and state law, but what is starting to happen, and this depends upon whether, what city you're in, whether you're in a Democratic city or a Republican city, what's starting to happen is that now these mayors and all these public officials are starting to come up with laws, and they're starting to link up with attorney generals to say, you know what, we want an opportunity to prosecute these guys and these women. So while you're actually absolutely right, Demetrius, when it comes to federal law, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of change that's actually happening right now. And now, obviously, I mean, when it comes to investigations and when it comes to the courts, we don't know what's going to happen. As a matter of fact, There are some attorney generals that are saying, well, hold on, let's wait and see what's going to happen. Let's flush these laws out before we see whether or not we can actually go through with them. And then there are other attorney generals that are saying, nope, we're going to press forward, such as what Keith Ellison is saying in Minneapolis. So we have to keep in mind that, yes, we do have federal law versus state laws, but this stuff is fluid and it's always changing. And also, I completely disagree, because Jonathan Ross did jump in front of that of the vehicle, and there goes the boom again.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mike, for that. Okay, we got 30 seconds. I do want to let everybody know the polls will be closing in a matter of minutes. Please vote. You can only vote one time if you're not signed in, or if you haven't subscribed to the Two-Sided Truth. Subscriptions are free 99. That's the best subscription, isn't it? So you can vote as many times as you want if you subscribe, but the polls are still open, probably for another 2 minutes. All right, I got a few follow-up questions. This question is for Michael, and I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock. What alternatives existed in the next 1 to 2 seconds, and why were they not reasonable?
You mean in terms of Jonathan Ross?
Yes.
What he could have just stayed on the side. That's all he had to do. I mean, he had his own video that he was actually recording, because there's an angle where he was actually on the side talking, and when she backed up, that's when he jumped in front. All he had to do was stand on the side, and he would have never been in any imminent danger, and he never got hit. So that's pretty easy from my perspective.
All right. Thank you so much. Demetrius, same question. What alternatives existed in the next 1 to 2 seconds, and why were they not reasonable?
Well, the alternatives is she could have complied with the police officer by exiting the vehicle after she broke multiple federal laws. When a police officer asks you to remove yourself from a vehicle after breaking laws, you should remove yourself from the vehicle. You shouldn't put your life in jeopardy by counting on the training of the police officer to not shoot. Any reasonable person knows that a vehicle could be used as a weapon, and therefore a police using his weapon towards you could be justifiable. Now, maybe she's never been in that situation before and she didn't know how to respond, but if you've never been in that situation, then moving forward, when a police asks you to exit the vehicle, you don't drive towards them. What you do is you stop your vehicle and you exit the vehicle. You fight the police in the courtrooms. You don't fight them at crime scenes, or you could potentially end up dead. Now, he could lose his job, but you could lose your life. You tell me, is it worth it?
Thank you, Demetrius. Thank you so much. All right. The polls will be closing in a matter of 30 seconds for round 1. Moving on to round 2. Before we get started, I have a few talking points. Again, we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and we're also streaming live on the Two-Sided Truth, but you can only vote on the twosidedtruth.com. Make your voice heard. And also feel free to make a comment. We're answering the chat. We're involved. We're engaged as well. All right. So behavior under stress matters. If good accelerated and turned toward agents or failed to comply with the commands, those actions can escalate perceived threat and lead to tragic outcomes. Okay. And then reporting describes an ice watch climate where civilians monitor and sometimes confront ICE agents, raising the odds of dangerous misreads on both sides. Some people say even if her car moved, the debate whether it was panic, confusion, or a non-assaultive attempt to leave contributed is not the same as culpable. And the state holds training, weapons, and authority. Ethical accountability is higher for armed agents than civilians reacting in fear. All right, you all, we're about to start on the next round and topic. Round 2 is responsibility of Renée Good. Did Renée Good's actions, intentional or not, contribute to the fatal outcome? And this next round, Mike is starting. Mike, you have all of 2 minutes, and the polls are closing on the next topic, and they're opening on this one.
Okay. I think it would be insane to actually say that Renee had no culpability at all. Um, full disclosure, I'm a former military police officer. And one of the things that you should do, and I agree with you, Demetrius. I'm with you 100% on this one, so I'm probably going to lose points here, but I'm with you 100% in that she has to have some culpability. You should at least comply. If an officer tells you to stop, if an officer asks for your ID, whatever, comply, because the goal is to get home alive and to get home safe. So I completely agree with that. With that said, she didn't have to be shot and killed. Okay. And that's where most of the culpability comes with Jonathan Ross. If you are afraid for your life, then to be honest, you shouldn't be an officer. Okay. The fact of the matter is, it's dangerous every time you walk out on those streets. Anybody will tell you that. Any police officer, any state trooper, any federal agent, anybody will tell you that it is dangerous every time you walk on those streets. And every time I hear police officers say, well, I was fearing for my life. Well, honestly, dude, that comes with the job. Okay. There's every time you leave the house, there's a chance that you can lose your life. That's just the reality, right? So the fact of the matter is, to openly kill her the way he did, it was wrong, and he should have most of the culpability. Now, I've heard a lot of talk about shooting out tires and things like that. I'm pretty sure, Demetrius, you probably heard the same thing, or shooting out tires and things like that. I can tell you, this is not the movies, okay, where you can shoot out a tire and all of a sudden a vehicle will stop. That's not how this works. But with that said, to just straight up shoot her the way he did multiple times, he has to take multiple culpability with that, especially when, and I will stay on this topic forever, he's the one that jumped in front of the vehicle. So while, yes, she should have obeyed, and there is some culpability on her part, you can't just take somebody's life like that. And there's the boom.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Mike. Demetrius, your turn on the same topic.
Okay, assigning responsibility is not the same as assigning moral worth. Renee Good was a human being, not a headline. But adults also have a responsibility to themselves and their family to live and be safe. Many of you have asked, but what did she do wrong? Um, how about intervening in an active federal operation? Renee intentionally blocked the street, blew her horn hysterically for minutes, taunted federal agents while they were in an active federal operation. This is a federal crime under 18 USC Section 111. Renee also remained in the vehicle during a tense law enforcement encounter where the officer lawfully directed her to exit her vehicle. This also could constitute a violation of 18 USC Section 111. Not disengaging, regardless of intent, increased her risk. The law consistently recognizes that noncompliance or interference can escalate situations which could lead to deadly consequences. I ask you, what reasonable person intentionally placed themselves in a federal investigation that doesn't involve them? What reasonable person drives towards a person, an officer, or not? Anyone that's holding a gun. Is it possible that she was confused? Yes. Is it possible that she panicked? Yes. Is it possible that she was trying to drive away? Possible, yes. Is it possible that a person being confused could lead to their own death? Absolutely. Is it possible that you panicking, reaching, or making sudden movements could lead to your death? Yes. Is it likely that driving towards an officer could get you killed? Absolutely. And if you've never heard this information before, you've now heard it. And I ask you, would you drive towards an officer moving forward if they ask you to remove yourself from a vehicle in any way? Probably not. You're going to be reasonable and you're going to exit the vehicle because you know what could happen. Maybe
All
she
right.
didn't.
Thank you, Demetrius. Okay. Mike, would you like to counter?
Yes, and I agree. For me, I can only speak for myself because Demetrius, you keep asking would any reasonable person drive towards drive towards an officer with the weapon. I can speak for me. I wouldn't do it. Okay, I'm not doing that. All right, I mean, I'm gonna follow the law. I'm gonna get out the vehicle. That's what I'm going to do. But the key phrase that you use there, Demetrius, is reasonable. And this is where officers have to show restraint. And this is where officers have to de escalate the situation. Because any officer will tell you they don't deal with reasonable people. They just don't. I mean, not every criminal. I mean, not every criminal's dumb, and not every criminal's idiot, and not every criminal's mentally insane, and all of that. But there are people who are not reasonable, right? So when you're dealing with unreasonable people, you have to use your critical thinking skills, and you have to be able to think like that real quick to make a quick decision so that you can de-escalate the situation. That's the goal. Now, again, I'll be the first one to say I'm not driving in front of a police officer or an ICE agent. I'm not messing with anybody with a gun. If I don't have a gun, I'm not doing that. That's crazy to me. It's complete lunacy. So I'm with you 100%, Demetrius. However, the key word that you used was reasonable. And when you are dealing with people on a daily basis, not everybody is reasonable. And when you're not dealing with reasonable people, that means that you have to be the bigger person. And on top of that, you have to practice restraint, right? And on top of that, you have to de-escalate the situation. And that should have happened in a better way here from my vantage point.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. I do want to let you all know the polls are open for this topic. They'll be closing probably in about another 2 to 3 minutes or so. Please don't forget to vote at the twosidedtruth.com. We're streaming on all platforms, but you can only vote on the twosidedtruth.com. And also, don't forget to comment in our comment section. Our comment section is open. All right, Demetrius, your counter.
My counter is simple, reasonable. Yes, the officer should practice restraint in these situations. I absolutely agree. But when you have 2 seconds and an unreasonable person trying to potentially kill you, because remember, we're not thinking about it in hindsight, we're thinking about it in the 2 seconds that he had. Speeding vehicle coming towards him from an unreasonable person. We're talking about a person that woke up that morning and said, "Hey, guess where I'm going? I'm going to a ICE uh, I'm going to confront ICE agents. I am going to impede in a federal investigation. I'm going to block off streets. I'm going to do all sorts of unreasonable things." What I notice is that every time we're talking about Renée Good, we're always giving her the benefit of the doubt. She was trying to get away. She was trying to do this. She was, well, what about the officer? Does the officer get any kind of, does he get any kind of grace? Because his life could have flashed before his eyes when that unreasonable person hit the gas towards him. Because I ask again, who does that? Why did she do it? And that ultimately caused her death. And let's just go back to what this topic is. This topic is, did she contribute to her own fatality? And she absolutely did. And no one moving forward should ever do this. ICE agents are federal agents. They're not the Gestapo. They're not this made up group that Trump made up. They're not just out here just kidnapping people like people are saying. They are enforcing federal law. They are enforcing federal law, the federal law that was not enforced over the last 4 years. This is why we are in this situation today. And I just want to say, rest in peace, Renée Good. Don't be the next Renée Good.
Okay, thank you so much. The polls are open. They'll be closing in a matter of probably 1 minute. I do have a few questions that I want to ask. Um, and you'll have 30 seconds. Please don't forget to vote on the twosidedtruth.com, the twosidedtruth.com. This is a great, great topic, you all. Um, Demetrius, question, 30 seconds. If you argue she contributed, what should she have done instead, specifically in that exact setting?
Okay, in that moment, she should have complied. She would have gotten out of the vehicle. Most likely, ICE agents can't enforce traffic laws. They could have potentially detained her and waited for local authorities to grab her, but most likely they would have just pushed her to the side and told her to stop impeding. She would have lived. Everyone would have been safe. But it goes back before that. Don't wake up in the morning and say I'm going out to federal to intervene in federal operations. Don't do it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Demetrius, for that. All right, Mike. Um, where is the line between noncompliance and panic, and who gets the benefit of the doubt? 30 seconds.
That's a really hard line in terms of non-compliance and panic. But the thing is, in terms of benefit of the doubt, the person who gets the benefit of the doubt is not the officer, but the actual person, because that person could be panicking. And like I said before, your job as an officer is to de-escalate. Right. So you have to do whatever you have to do to calm the situation down, especially if the person is panicking or going crazy or losing it. It's on you to do that.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. All right, you all, we are moving on to round three. To give you a little bit of information, the polls will be closing on the previous round in a matter of 30 seconds. DHS owned published DHS DHS's own published use of force report exists, but it is limited and not directly comparable to DOJ or Interior because most agencies do not publish similar data. Congress CRS summarized FY 2023 as 472 CBP use of force incidents and 78 ICE incidents, with CBP incidents including deaths and serious injuries in a small subset. GAO has examined DHS use of force review boards and data practices, pointing to oversight and consistency challenges. So, the round three subtopic is accountability and systematic issues. Who should be held accountable, the ICE agent, federal leadership, or the system that enabled the operation? And Demetrius, you are up. You have 2 minutes, and I want everybody to know that the polls are open for this next topic. The polls are open for this next topic. You can only vote on the two-sidedtruth.com. All right, Demetrius, you are up.
Okay, it says who should be held accountable? Well, it depends on what you consider as accountable. If you think criminally charging the officer is accountability, I believe that you're sadly mistaken. Accountability is essential, but it must be properly targeted and properly distributed. Criminal charges require intent or reckless disregard. Not present here, in my opinion. Prosecuting officers in legally justified shootings has always had a negative effect on lawful enforcement. You see this showing up in many ways, including early retirements of police officers and the youth being shamed not to go into law enforcement as a career. So, therefore, there's shortages of officers all over the country. Political prosecution erodes trust rather than restoring it. Civil liability, that said, the government may still bear civil responsibility. Operational planning, crowd control, um, interagency coordination, and mitigation can all be scrutinized without criminalizing split second decisions. It's my belief that more cooperation with ICE, more cooperation with federal investigations could lead to people being protected. Civil courts exist precisely for this reason, to compensate harm without distorting criminal law. If you guys can think back, O.J. Simpson was found not guilty for the criminal law of his ex-wife's murder, but he was found civilly liable.
Yeah.
So in this situation, I am saying that in this federal situation, that the federal government may be federal liable for her death, but criminal when every these people are saying, "Oh, she was murdered in cold blood." That's an absolute lie, and that really sends additional people off to be in that situation. And I think that's reckless, in my opinion.
Okay, Demetrius, thank you so much. All right, Mike, before you get started, please for this round, polls are open, you all. All right, Mike, you're up.
All right. There's an old saying. This saying that actually has been around for a long time, and it was actually in the movie Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington, right? And this saying is attitude reflect leadership. And this is exactly why I'm blaming federal leadership on this. Attitude reflect leadership. Okay. Let's go back to Barack Obama. Okay. Because, this sometimes gets lost in the sauce a little bit. Barack Obama was known as the deporter in chief. He deported over 3.2 million people out of this country. Okay. But the way he did it was much more civil and much more reasonable than the way President Trump is doing. Okay, that's why attitude reflect leadership. And then when you have people such as DHS Secretary Kristi Noem coming out and saying, "Oh well, they have complete immunity; they be nice agents," and you also have JD Vance, Vice President Vance, coming out saying, "Oh, they have complete immunity." Well, when you tell some people, not all, because you don't want to generalize, right? When you tell some people that you know what, you can do whatever you want to do, and I'm not going to hold you accountable, what do you think some of those people going to do? Okay, being a teacher, if I tell my students, you know what, I'm going to give you a quiz today, but you can go ahead and cheat, look in the book, whatever you need to do. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to go ahead and cheat. Some of them, not all, they're going to go ahead and cheat, look in the book, and do what they got to do to get the good grade on the quiz that I gave them. Okay, so when you do these types of things and when you say these types of words, and even, President Trump is even, like I said, he's even backtracked by saying, you know what, we need to calm down a little bit. And that's why he removed Greg Bovino from Minneapolis and added Tom Homan, who was the guy that Obama had leading his charge for all those years, right? Because he's even seeing that, you know what, this isn't working well, right? Again, as I close, attitude reflect leadership. And so that's why I'm blaming federal leadership for this.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. All right, the polls are still open for this topic at the twosidedtruth.com, the twosidedtruth.com. That's where you can vote. We're streaming on all platforms, but if you want to vote, you got to vote on the twosidedtruth.com. You can sign in, you can subscribe. Either one is free. All right, Demetrius, you are up. Would you like to counter?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's disingenuous to bring up Barack Obama in this situation, talking about how he deported so many people. Right now, the negative media that's going towards President Trump is directly encouraging these people to be in the situation that they're in. What's wrong with deporting illegal people that have violated the federal law? What's wrong with it? Well, the difference between what Barack Obama did and what President Trump is doing is that Barack Obama didn't have a president before him for 4 years that had um, extreme numbers of illegal people coming through the borders unchecked. Okay, now I know that most of you don't know that President Trump ran on that he would get these ICE agents to find these potentially dangerous people and remove them from the country. Hundreds of people have been murdered by Venezuelan gang members, by terrorist organizations, and it is the responsibility of the president to make the country safe, and therefore he's going out and he's doing it. What would be better is if local authorities actually work with him. But see, they have an incentive to not work with them. Remember, it was the Democrat Party that allowed these people to come in. You got to ask why. Is it because they care about these people so much? If they did, then they would put forth a law that exempt these people. They would put forth laws that would allow these people to be here legally. But did they? No, they didn't. They are using those people as a political tool and political pawns. Oh, it's the fault. It's not the fault of the administration, but it is the fault of the administration before that created this problem.
All right. Thank you so much. Mike, would you like to counter? The polls are open for this topic. The polls are open for this topic. Mike, would you like to counter?
Yes, and Demetrius, again, about to lose some more points to you, brother, because I completely agree with you, especially with that last 40 seconds. The unfortunate reality, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, is that when quote unquote migrants came to these sanctuary cities such as Chicago and New York, they were welcomed with open arms, especially here in Chicago. I could talk for days in terms of how all of these migrants, and it's no fault of their own. I mean, they're looking for a better life, right? So I can't be mad at them for that. I mean, you want a better life, you're gonna do what you got to do, right? But in my humble opinion, it came at the expense, of Black people as well as other races of homeless people who were not only homeless, like I said, but were also looking for jobs and couldn't get them. Needed money, couldn't get it because money was given to migrants. And also keep in mind that in a lot of these democratic cities, what's happening is a lot of people are moving out, especially African Americans are moving out of Chicago. And so they needed to be replaced. How you replace them? You replace them with migrants. So I completely agree with you on that, Demetrius. You're 100% correct on that. Where I disagree with you, though, is when it comes to how the migrants got here, right? They got here through Texas, okay? And all the states in the South. All the Texas governor had to do was say, you know what? You guys go back to Mexico. We're not going to let you in. Instead, he actually put them on buses and shipped them here. So that actually contributed to migrants coming here, right? So while I completely agree with you, Demetrius, you're 100% right. Let's not discount what Texas governor did in terms of shipping them here. And that goes back to my original point when it comes to this subtopic. Attitude reflects leadership. This is why you have to blame federal leadership when it comes to these things, because they're the ones who are setting the tone. And when you have a tone and people don't follow it, boom, explosions can happen like what just happened.
I need 30 seconds, Lisa.
Can you hold it for the sparring match? Because you got 3 minutes for the sparring match. We got one more round before we get to the sparring match. Write your question down. Right, you guys. All right. Don't forget to vote on this topic. The polls will be closing in all of 30 seconds. We are moving on to round 4. I don't have any questions for this round. We're moving on to round 4. Officer safety and mission reality. Immigration operations can involve arrest of people with criminal histories, flight risk, and chaotic public interference. The state argues it needs credible force options to prevent assaults and escapes. Some argue that visible resistance makes operations more dangerous, so firm enforcement reduces disorder long term. Community fear and legitimacy. High-profile shootings during immigration operations can erode trust, chill reporting of crimes, and radicalize both sides. When civilians feel they must monitor enforcement and agents feel surrounded, the risk of misinterpretation rises. Moving on to round 4. Broader implications of federal enforcement. What does this incident say about immigration enforcement and use of force in communities? And I believe, Mike, did you go first the last round, or was it Demetrius? Can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Me either, but I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Demetrius. Go ahead, bro.
Okay. All right. We are moving on. Demetrius, you have all of 2 minutes for this topic, and go.
Okay, immigration enforcement is emotionally charged, but law doesn't function on emotion and emotion alone. Federal enforcement is lawful and necessary. Undermining it through obstruction increases danger to civilians and officers. Chaos favors tragedy. If communities want fewer tragedies, the answer isn't demonizing ICE agents, demonizing the President of the United States. It's reducing interference, lowering emotional escalation, and encouraging disengagement. We don't need you to go out and follow ICE agents to record them. Oh, no, we don't need you to do that. The safest encounter is the one that never becomes a confrontation. This conversation should be about preventing the next tragedy, not relitigating grief. I can hold compassion for Renee Good while still telling the truth, the legal and practical truth. Justice is not served by emotionally satisfying outcomes, it's served by lawful ones. We dishonor victims when we bend the law to fit a narrative. It is important. It is important that you realize that it's not your job to go out and follow ICE agents. A lot of this hysteria and chaos is being created simply to have you in an emotional state so you can go out and you can vote a certain way. Think about that. You talked earlier about laws being changed, federal law, state laws, and all of these mayors and writing executive orders. All these things do is trigger people emotionally. It triggers people to think that they have a just cause to go out and go toe to toe with the nice agent. Let those people do their job, stay out of their way, and if you want to protest, protest at the federal building, protest at the White House, protest at City Hall, but not at an active federal investigation. Don't do it. It's dangerous and you could be a future victim.
Okay. Thank you, Demetrius. All right. Mike, you're up
Mhm.
next. 2 minutes. Don't forget the polls are open for round 4.
The thing is, you can protest, but it has to be peaceful. I agree with you, Demetrius. You cannot agitate, but it has to be peaceful. It has to be authentic organization. I say it from the beginning that I'm going to tell the truth. And the fact of the matter is that when it comes to some of these protests, they're not completely authentic. And why do I say that? I'm not sure if either you, Demetrius, or you, Lisa, have received these type of texts, but I just got a text. As a matter of fact, this past last Saturday, February the 7th, and I'm going to read it to you verbatim. It says, "Will you be at the next No Kings rally on March 28th? If you're planning to show up, please RSVP right now." So not only are some of these groups actively recruiting, but in some cases, they're actually paying people to show up and be agitators. That doesn't help the situation. I am all for making sure that everybody is held accountable, including ICE. But the key word that I said there is everyone. And when everyone is held accountable, then what happens? We can lower the use of deadly force in our communities, because that's part of the subtopic. You want to eliminate the use of deadly force in communities? Then yes, you can peacefully protest, but it's got to be peaceful. You cannot agitate. And why you would want to agitate someone with a gun blows my mind. I don't understand that. I'm not agitating anybody with a gun, right? But you can peacefully protest. You can go to federal buildings. You can get the right permits so you can peacefully protest down a street, as long as there are alternative streets that ambulances can go down and first responders can go down so that people can be safe. But if you really want to make sure that you lower the use of force in communities, then all of us have to work together. It cannot just be ICE. It also has to be those of us who want to peacefully protest. And please, for goodness sakes, stop actively recruiting people to cause problems. That does not help the situation.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. Demetrius, would you like to counter?
Well, it wouldn't be a counter because Mike is really on my side when it comes down to this. And
Mhm.
the reality is the fact that you understand um, that these are not organic protests, that these are manufactured protests, lets you know when we were talking about culpability and liability. A lot of this is dark money coming from the side. And again, it is for a political motive. right? So I've heard that this lady was murdered 100 times. Listening to the news, listening to people, and I've heard that ICE is not really federal agents. I'm like, where did you get this goofy information from?
Mhm.
And you have people out here operating like that information is factual. And therefore, if you think that's factual, then you think that you are going. When you listen to people like Mayor Johnson saying that he's fighting the resistance, when you think about it like this, political people are protected in their speech. So they can say a lot of incendiary things and they not be held accountable. Same way with certain people in the news. But when you say I'm fighting the resistance, you got people really thinking that fighting the federal government is the resistance. When you use dog whistle language like, oh, the federal ICE agents are the Gestapo or the slave catchers. When you use that, you get people emotionally charged and they go out and they do things that they wouldn't necessarily normally do. And when that's the case, additional people become put themselves in harm's way. I'm not saying that officers are always right. I'm saying that fight them in the courtroom. Don't go out in investigations attacking them and doing some of the crazy stuff that we've seen, ramming your car into an officer. Why would you do that? It's crazy.
Okay. Thank you so much. We forgot to start the timer on this one. So, Mike, I'm giving you the last word because would you like to counter? It's your turn.
Sure, sure, yeah, because again, we Demetrius and I are pretty much in lockstep when it comes to this topic. And the thing that I always tell people is that you have to understand your history when it comes to protesting. One of the biggest things that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King did was it wasn't just about protesting; it was about getting laws changed. It was about fighting in the courts to get stuff changed. That's how you make real change. When it comes to the Montgomery bus boycott, I mean, any parts of the civil rights movement that you can think of. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was always meeting with mayors, governors, presidents, met with Lyndon Johnson. He was always doing these things. Why? Because he understood that it's not just about the protest. It's about what real change can you make in a courtroom? What real change can you make when it comes to the Constitution? What real change can you make with laws, not just at the federal level, but at the state level, the city level? Even with your city council. So, I'm all for protesting. I'm all for that, but we have to make sure that it is done the right way. And, again, coming back to, use of force and what does the incident say? I mean, for me, it's really simple. If you want to eliminate certain uses of force, and again, there are always going to be rogue police officers. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, there's history of that, right? And even though, yes, I have consistently said that, you have to be the bigger person, you have to hold yourself accountable. Well, again, not everybody's going to do that, right? And sometimes emotions going to come into play. And when emotions come into play, anything can happen. So I've always been a proponent of we have to work together in order to lower the use of force in our communities. And we also have to work together to make sure that all laws are enforced within our communities. And my final thought will be on this is, if you don't like the laws that you have, that's why you get involved. You vote. You become a part of your city council. You run for office. These are the things that you need to do in order to change laws, especially if you do not like how the laws are set up in terms of use of force within our community. So be the change that you want to see.
All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. So, our last and final round is our sparring match, you guys. So, Demetrius and Michael, you will have 3 minutes on the clock, and you get to ask each other whatever question you want. I ask you all to be respectful. So, if you have any questions, we're going to go ahead and put up the 3-minute timer. Uh-oh.
Go ahead,
All
Demetrius.
right.
I know you got a question, Demetrius. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to talk about, you mentioned you blame Texas for this immigration problem. Let me first say this. Governor Abbott did everything that he could. He asked for help from Joe Biden. The Democrat Party that was in charge at the time, they ignored the problem. Okay. It is not the job of state governors to enforce the border. He can't legally place people on the other side of the border that would be enforcing the laws. What he did was he tried to enact a wall, a temporary barrier to keep people from coming over in certain spots. Remember, he was federally sued to remove that barrier. So what he said was, okay, the sanctuary cities, they want everybody, the people up in the north that act like, oh, it's not happening down here. Well, let me send them and let's test their sanctuary city policies. And that's what happened.
Yeah, but come on. I mean, you're right, but come on. I mean, when you do stuff like that, when you send all of those migrants up to sanctuary cities such as New York City and Chicago, you have to understand the damage that you're going to cause. I mean, the damage up here that has happened, especially here in Chicago, has been almost irreversible. I mean, we've had all kinds of issues. We've had ICE, going into apartment buildings right down the street from my house over here on 75th and South Shore. They're raiding buildings and they're doing these types of things. When you set stuff in motion like that, I mean, the results can be catastrophic.
What you mean setting in motion? By opening the border?
Well, no, but by sending the migrants up here.
What should he have did though?
But I'm saying I agree with you when it comes to Biden. I mean, I
no. But what should the governor of Texas had did? What was his alternative? Because if you upset with the amount of people that came into Chicago, you upset with the amount of people that was in New York. All of those people were in Texas when he was screaming for help and he was being ignored. Remember, they was asking the president and the vice president, "Have you been to the southern border?" And they was like, "Oh, we don't. I haven't been to Europe either." They were saying all of these things except for, "Oh, we know there's a problem. Let us lock the border down." Now the border is locked.
Yeah, but I mean, but at the same time, Demetrius, you have to admit that this was calculated in terms of sending them here to Chicago and sending them to New York. And then you cannot, not you personally, not you, but you cannot come back. You cannot say on one hand, well, we have to get rid of all these people and we have to get all these illegal immigrants, as some people like to call them, out of the country, but then turn around and then send them to sanctuary cities. And then when you know they're going to be protected in those sanctuary cities and because the mayors are going to protect them. I mean, it's almost like a, you know what I'm saying, Demetrius, it's almost like a circular argument, folks. And they'll go to boom.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you all so much for that. Polls are about to close. I have one more question that I'm going to ask, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds each to answer it. While the polls are still open for this last sparring round, if you want to vote, you have a chance to do so. At the last sparring round is still open. What would community safety require from both sides, residents and agents, starting tomorrow? Demetrius, 30 seconds.
Can you repeat that question?
Sure. What would community safety require from both sides, residents and agents, starting tomorrow?
Well, just a little bit of common sense. Stay away from, stop attacking ICE agents. And if they bring down the volume of the language that's coming from leaders that disagree with Trump, if they worked with him rather than working against him, then things would be a lot smoother. Just cooperating with federal law. Like, if you don't cooperate with federal law as a state or as a city, that's an insurrection. That's an insurrection. That's you succeeding from the federal union of the United States.
Okay. Thank you, Demetrius. Same question. Do you want me to repeat it, Mike?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Same question. 30 seconds.
We have to work together. And when I say we, I mean all of us. Even when those of us who are on different sides of the aisle, Demetrius and I are a perfect example here. We're on different sides of the aisle. But if we want things to work, then both of us as reasonable minds need to come together and work together to make it better for everyone. And that includes everybody. Everybody needs to come together and work together so we can solve this problem of stuff blowing up all the time.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for that. All right. And we have a winner. We have a winner. The winner, excuse me.
Did you say winter?
I said winter. I meant winner. The winner for tonight's debate is Demetrius L. Reddy. Yay, Demetrius.
Good job, Demetrius, brother. You did a good job tonight, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. You did a good job, man. I appreciate you being more as one of the regular conversations I've had about this subject. You're more honest than a lot of people I've had a conversation with. I can tell when I have conversations with people like you that you are looking for a solution.
For sure.
And I think that it there's hope when there's reasonable, responsible people, even when we don't agree, that somehow we can meet in the middle and come up with solutions to help others.
Okay,
Yes.
he's giving his acceptance speech. Thank you, Mike. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for your hard work with this debate, the research that you've done. Demetrius, thank you so much for the research that you've done. You are gifted a gift certificate to one of our sponsors, The Flip Side with Lisa Tracy or Shy High Apparel. Thank you for all who have viewed. I appreciate you all. Join us for our next debate next week. Our topic of debate is Valentine's Day is over. Did you get what you really wanted? Join us for two debaters with opposing views. Okira Hollis and Faye Williams take on this battle of the sexes topic. Also, if you're interested in a debate and becoming a debater, go to the twosidedtruth.com. We're looking for debaters. We're always looking for debaters. We want your opposing view on our show. If you want to keep the conversation going, check out our newsletter, The Flip Side with Lisa Tracy, at theflipsidewithlisatracy.com, where we bring to you two perspectives to both sides of the story. Check us out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, and of course, The Two-Sided Truth. Thank you so much again, and have a great evening.